everybody to today's webinar. It's an exciting topic. We've got a lot of people registered for today's webinar, which is an executive briefing on workforce management. Who have we got on the agenda today? Delighted to be joined by David Evans from Business Systems. David has got, is it something like 15 years of resource planning experience?
It is indeed, John. I was just calculating this morning how long I've worked in a sort of resource planning role. So yes, it's coming up to the 15-year anniversary this year.
Fabulous. And we're also joined by Colin Whelan from the professional planning. Colin, you've worked in contact centres for more years than I've had hot dinners, I guess.
Yeah, we just leave it at 20 plus, John. So good afternoon, everybody.
So quite a lot of experience or grey hair. I don't know which is the best one to describe it. We'll also be doing top tips from the audience and interactive questions and answers as well. But before we get going, just want to find out a little bit about you in the audience. So just like to find out from you, how large is your contact centre? The answers are 0 to 10 agents, 10 to 49 agents, 50 to 99 agents, 100 to 399 agents, or 400 plus. So just like to vote on the poll that's open there, and we're getting some quite interesting pictures coming back. Let's just, I think we've got 2 or 3 more to vote. That's it. Thank you very much, and we'll just share that with the audience. So we've got quite a range here, but looks like a very significant part of the audience are well over 100 seats. The biggest range there is 100 to 399 seats. Quite a proportion of larger contact centres as well, and actually quite a low proportion of small centres as well. So thank you very much for that. Just hide those results there. So just like to then pass the baton across to Dave Evans, who will be introducing himself, and Colin will introduce himself, and then we'll get into the presentations. So David, if you'd just like to pull the slides up on the screen, should be great.
Excellent. Thank you very much, John T. So just a quick introduction. I'm David Evans, Workforce Management Consultant for Business Systems. So I've spent most of my career working in a resource planning role, which I absolutely love. So not always as a consultant. I've worked setting up resource planning teams, on operational support teams. So I've worked on both sides, I guess.
Wonderful. And Colin, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'd be delighted to. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Colin Whelan. I'm the Head of Professionalism for the industry body, the Professional Planning Forum. As I mentioned earlier, I've worked in the industry for over 20 years, working for organisations like Barclaycard, Barclays Bank, First Choice Holidays, and I've worked for the Professional Planning Forum now just in the last 6 years, supporting the industry and helping all types and all sectors of the industry move forward in their planning and their customer contact interactions.
Wonderful. And I think you're starting off the presentation.
I believe so. Thank you. So this session today is an introduction to workforce management software. It's an executive briefing. So what is WFM? Well, as I just mentioned, WFM is workforce management. It's the name given to a type of software that we use to help plan our organizations, be them call centers, back office, whatever. And we'll explore that a bit more in a few moments' time. So what does this piece of software do? Well, is it a big staff database? Is it a rota tool? Well, fundamentally, it's designed to ensure we have the right number of staff in the right place at the right time with the right skills to deliver the customer experience and achieve our goals, be that a service level, keeping our costs down, or engaging our customers. We can use mathematics to work out how many agents we need. We can use spreadsheets and bits of paper to work out how many staff we have. But 52% of the people on this call already this morning have 100 or less people, and everyone there will know how tricky that is to try and keep track of 100 people's location and activities at the same time across a business. 48% have 100 more, and you can understand the scale some contact centres now have in our industry. That would just become a thankful task. Workforce management is specialist software to help us identify the gap between what we have, what we need, and all the skills and the additional time we require to ensure we have the the best possible chance to deliver against our goals. Specialist software for a reason. And what I want to do now is pass you back to David so we can start to take you through how we start to build our knowledge behind these and how it works within our industry. So I'll pass to you, David.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Colin. So before we sort of delve into the key features of workforce management, I think it's worth covering something called the planning cycle. So all good workforce management applications are based on this key principle, and it's a process of continuous improvement. So the first step really is forecasting your volumes and calculating how many people you need to handle your contacts. So this covers long-term forecasts down to daily forecasts and what we call intraday forecasts. So you might be forecasting at 30 or 15-minute intervals. Now once you've created these wonderful forecasts, you then need to schedule your resource against it. So you're going to be scheduling your agents and events. And you're going to be scheduling them, so you're going to be balancing your resource with schedules at the right time to achieve your service levels or business goals. Now that sounds wonderful, doesn't it? But on the day, you still need to manage that because things do change on the day, unfortunately. And we call this service delivery or real-time management. So how do you react on the day to any changes to your contact arrival patterns? Now the last link in the chain for this is to analyze the performance. So what is happening? What has happened? Do we need to change anything? What was the impact of X, Y, Z? And how can we do better next time? So it's this cycle of continuous improvement. And what workforce management allows organizations to do is to work within this framework to really drive the business forward.
Okay, we're now going to go to a poll question. And what we want to do is look at what types of contacts do you handle in your contact center. So you can vote on more than one of these. So the options are calls, back office, web chat, SMS, or social media. So if you'd just like to vote for all that apply to you, if there's something that's not on the list there, if you'd just like to share that. In the question box on the right-hand side. So, Colin, do you think web chat's going to be very likely to come up?
You know, John, I really hope so. Those of you who know the Professional Planning Forum, we had our awards process last week, and one of the overall winners was, well, the overall winner was BT with their customer interaction Net Easy, and they've actually found out that their customers value web chat as the easiest way to interact with any supplier they're trying to get to. So I really hope it's a high score. 29%, so a third of organisations on this session are involved in that. That's fantastic. I'm
yeah,
really,
that's certainly that surprised me by how high that's become. I know it's been a lot of the figures I've seen have been more about sort of 10 or 11%. So I think that's quite a big jump up. 28% social media calls. I think almost go without saying, but an awful lot of back office stuff as well there.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It doesn't surprise me, back office, because it's one of the things I think is key now to resource planning. It's not just about front office; it's about back office optimization as well.
And I think we're going to be talking about that in a short while. So, David, back across to you.
Okay, thank you very much, John T. I'm just going to cover off now something called Erlang. Now, I'd class this bit of the webinar as the science bit, so please stick with me for a second. But one of the fundamental principles of planning for call arrival is linked to something called Erlangs and the Erlang calculation. Now, it sounds obvious, and I'm sure you already know, but calls arrive randomly. So predicting how many staff are required is quite difficult. So most workforce management products use an Erlang formula to work out the required staff primarily for their call-related activity. Now, just a little bit of history. Mr. Erlang, Mr. A.K. Erlang, he was a Danish telecoms engineer, and he worked out this formula that you'd be able to provide the number of staff required.
That was back in the 1930s.
It was a long time ago, a very long time ago. So, yes. So it's known as Erlang C, and it works out the number of people required based on the number of calls queuing or waiting to be served, the average duration of each call, and what the expected delay to answer or the service level. So the formula's up on the screen there. We're certainly not going to cover that today. It's a bit too complex.
Well, I think I've got an engineering degree, and even that scares me, I've got to say.
So let's just cover off a very quick example of it, just to put it into context. So, for example, if you know your call arrival pattern, you know you're getting 250 calls per half hour, you know the average handling time of those contacts is 240 seconds, and then you've got a service level. So you want to answer 80% of those calls, in this example, for 20 seconds. What Erlang C will do, it will work out how many agents are required for that time period. So it's 39 agents. So what it does, it takes into account the fact that calls arrive randomly into your organization. So hopefully that wasn't too scientific for you, a nice easy example, but Erlang is one of the key principles I think it's good to cover off today. Now I'm just going to cover off now, moving on to the forecasting side, some of the key features of forecasting and workforce management.
We also had a bit of feedback from the audience, some of the other things they're dealing with in their contact center. Email, which is one thing, we only had a limited number of choices we could put up on there. Outbound calls, one of the other things, so certainly lots more areas that people need to forecast.
Fantastic. It's good to see we've got a good multi-channel organization dialed in today. So in terms of forecasting then, for workforce management, I love the capabilities it brings to forecasting. It really helps you make your forecasts look accurate, and as a planner it makes you look good, which is always a good thing. So with workforce management, you're going to get access to your historical trends. So you're going to be able to capture your contacts and build a profile of your arrival patterns over time. So you're going to be able to understand your busiest days, but not only your busiest days, but the busiest parts of the days. So you can then take this into account when you're scheduling your resource. You also get access to something called special patterns. And as a planner, I used to love these because you can capture special or distinctive contact arrival patterns and use them for future forecasting. So when I was doing a resource planning role in a retail environment, I used to use these all the time for looking at public holidays or the days after public holidays, where you know that the volume of calls received is going to be different to the norm. And it's not just the volume of the calls, it's the actual pattern of the arrival of those calls. So you can save those down and use them to make your forecast more accurate.
Yeah, because if you didn't do that, for instance, there'd be an assumption there'd be another Olympics happening this summer.
Exactly. So you would need to take that out of your future forecast, mark that off as a special pattern. Yep. So any key event, Olympics, sporting event, etc., you can mark those down, and you then have the choice to use them or take them out of your forecasts. Also with forecasting, you get access to what-if scenario planning. And again, you can turn these around very quickly to give the operation a bit of direction and some options to the business. So the example I would use here is, you might send out a mailing, marketing might send out a mailing, and there might be something wrong on that mailing. Now, I'm sure that has never happened in any organization you work with, but let's just pretend it has. And that might be then generating demand back into your contact center or your organization. So what you can really quickly do with what-if scenarios is work out the impact of, for example, coping with that change of arrival. So do you need to change your break patterns? What if we ask for overtime? What if we ask other areas from back office to help out on taking the calls? So it really gives the contact center some direction. And then you've got the capability to fine-tune your forecast. You can really drill down and improve your accuracy. So if you're in a particularly seasonal business, and again I'll refer back to retail, you might be planning for your peak trading. You can apply a seasonality factor. Some financial services industry companies might have a week of month factor, i.e. calls related to a billing or a statement cycle. So in that case, you could apply a week of month factor. Or even if there's just been a change to your contacts coming in, you can weight your forecast based on the last 2, 3, or 4 weeks. So with workforce management, your forecasts are going to start to become really accurate. But I think we've already mentioned this now. It's not just about calls we're talking about here. We're talking about multi-channel, multi-contact. So I'm just going to hand back to Colin now, who's going to cover off some back office forecasting and planning.
Yeah, we've got some discussion starting to take place on the chat room, callcenterhelp.com/chat. about a number of people who have got postal application forms coming through and letters as well. So it's not just sort of electronic forms of communication people are using.
Exactly, and what I would say to that is, as long as you can measure it, you can forecast and schedule against it. So again, they're not excluded from any of the resource optimization techniques.
Okay, over to you, Colin.
Very much so. So the biggest challenge that I've seen over the last 15, 16 years in the contact center industry is workforce management as a software solution has really helped us fine-tune the way we plan for our customer operations, our inbound environments, which is, as David explained, where we use the airline formula for randomness. But what we saw a lot is chairmen and directors and senior board members are very happy with what we do in the call center, are asking us to take these disciplines and this level of control to wider parts of the organization, which is why we're seeing this as such a growth area in the workforce management space and in the planning space. To put into context, my last operational role was at Barclaycard Business. When I started in that role, only 20% of the sites I was responsible for had back office. But because we instilled such discipline through the use of our workforce management, before I left to join the planning forum, 60% of my work was for the back office parts of the banking organisation, which shows that more and more we're trying to obtain these control need disciplines. So with this massive growth, there's one simple thing we need to remember. The airline formula is very much around the customer is there in front of you at that time. So things like web chat, some emails, calls, even social media and SMS, the customer is interacting with you there and then live. So they all fall under the queue dynamic piece, and we'll use the airline formula to calculate the staffing requirements, when we need the staff and how we schedule those staff to be there. The back office environment, so longer based emails, white papers, applications, that kind of stuff, we start to move into what we call backlog management, where we're starting to actually identify, let's not staff the same number of staff we need on a Monday, on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so let's make service levels greater than 24 hours. How many of you have service levels in your back office environment longer than 24 hours? Why do you think that is? A customer never wanted that.
Yeah, it would be quite interesting if anyone in the audience wants to put in what their service level targets are for back office operation.
Yeah, very much so, because it's a resource allocation tool. But let's be quite frank, the work doesn't go away. Whereas in an inbound environment, the call abandons and we give a bad customer experience. But in a back office environment, the work stays there. So, for example, an innovation finalist from a number of years ago, the Coventry Building Society, they won our first ever back office award for a program called Same Day In, Same Day Out, or SDSO. And what that pretty much meant was that there was 8 separate departments across the entire mortgage part of the building society. And every morning they'd identify how much work came in, how many staff were available. And they'd do a marvellous and miraculous thing. They'd speak to each other and they'd share resource around to try and ensure everything that came in that day, to the best of their abilities, without being too expensive, they could get as close to managing all that in one go.
And we're getting quite a wide variety of different service levels. Lloyd has said their back office SLA is 2 to 3 days. Samantha said it's 4 hours. Paul has said, depending on the case type, that can be up to 65 working days. That's end to end. Russell has said all customers back within 1 hour of posting their inquiry. So that's certainly very fast. And Robert has said, depending on the task, the BOP SL range, from 4, 12, or 24 hours for most of our clients. And we've got a few others, 48 hours, 1 day, or 48 hours to 5 days, says Jeff. So quite a wide range. I guess that depends also on the type of business. So
completely. And as we've seen, John, a back office can be so many different things, from process applications, moving forward a workflow, to a piece of paper physically to our door. And it's interesting, anything less than 24 hours requires us to go down the airline route and and the queue dynamics. And shortly Dave's going to talk us about simulation and how we can get better with our planning behind that. But anything greater than 24 hours, we need to plan as a backlog. That takes me quite nicely on to what Scottish Power did a couple of years ago. They used their workforce management solution as a way of tracking how they were getting on against their workload. In a back office environment, you may receive a certain number of pieces of work in the morning and you understand how long they take and how many staff you've got. But can we actually stay on top of all our staff throughout the moment? They took the effort to integrate it back into their workforce management, to track it, and then to plan and to change their plans on the hoof to give the best experience for the customer. Really innovative. It was a fascinating piece, which I think gives me a great opportunity to hand back to Dave to take us forward.
Thank you very much, Colin. So I think now we're going to go back to another poll question.
Yeah, we're going to go to a poll, and I'll just put that up on the screen. And that is, what is it you'd like workforce management to be able to solve for you? We've got a number of different scenarios. You can vote for multiple ones there. Just put the poll up. So what sort of problems do you want workforce management to solve for you? Understand how it can improve back office planning, we're just discussing. How it can forecast requirements for multi-skilled staff. How you can use it to plan across multiple channels. Ability to produce forecasts and what-if scenarios, or improve agent satisfaction and work-life balance. So you can vote for more than one if you'd just like to put that up. A few more results while you're doing that coming up. Babak has said the SLA for back office for high priority is 24, I guess it's 24 hours. For medium is 72 hours, and for low is 5 working days. So some degree of being able to prioritize volumes based on.
Yeah, it's interesting the different service levels we're seeing for back office here, which highlights what a complex area it is to forecast and schedule in. So
let's have a look at what the most common thing that people are looking to do with workforce management technology. Forecast for multi-skilled staff comes up top 73%. Forecasting across multiple channels, that seems to be ever much of a bigger headache for people these days. Right across the board, back office planning about 48%. I think that's been one of the big changes that I've seen coming through. What I'd like to do is now just drill down into that into a little bit more detail. So I'd like to ask you the question: what's the biggest problem that you face when it comes to forecasting and scheduling? So if you'd just like to type your answer to that question into the question box on the right-hand side. What's your biggest problem when it comes to forecasting and scheduling? Just give you a little time to get those answers in. Right. Wendy said the biggest problem that she faces is getting it right. Call arrival pattern, says Eugene. James said forecasting across multiple channels with agents moving through tasks across the course of the day. I guess that's certainly a challenging one. So we've got a number of ones. Let's put a few up. Adjusting for changes in contact levels, which are frequent. Lloyd says because we're a small contact center, with then getting the efficiency levels right is a challenge. Gosh, the answers here are flooding in faster than I can read them. Forecasts change frequently at short notice, but schedules need to be locked in weeks in advance, says Ben. Generating schedules in unsocial times and being fair across a period of time. So certainly fairness in schedules is quite a hard one.
Definitely, yes. It's something we'll talk about later in terms of agent engagement and empowerment.
Yeah, Erica said not enough knowledge on forecasting to produce an accurate forecasting model. Colin, I guess sort of knowledge of forecasting is a bit of a black art at times, I guess.
Very much so, John. It's twofold. Is the data we've got reliable and reflective of what we've got going forward? Because as a number of the people said there, the way their business is changing so rapidly means what we're basing our forecasts on isn't always reflective of what's going on. But also, can we actually trigger what the inputs are? Is it marketing? Is it product? Is it the industry. So it's a hard act to get right, but workforce management is designed to give you the best insights and the best foundation to build your forecast from.
Yeah, and we're finding people like Justin is saying, it's difficult with no historic data, probably because it's a new product. Robert is struggling working with an old ACD system. Paul's trying to deal with back office service level management, so very much the back office there. Scheduling certainly seems to come up as one of the big challenges people have. Diana's saying scheduling based on the arrival system. Hughes is saying that scheduling during lunch breaks and times is quite difficult. Single skills across the departments. Customer service can help sales, but not the other way around. So that's sort of a bit difficult when you have people in that sort of multi.
Yes, in a sort of silo approach. So, are there any opportunities to multi-skill your staff, etc.?
Yeah, Monica's finds that the challenge is call lengths vary a lot between advisors. Christine's struggling with the best time to maximize the contact rate on outbound dialing, which is that's a whole topic in itself, and one we've dealt with on outbound seminars. Some of that isn't necessarily derived from a workforce management system. Some of that's actually looking at the calling patterns when people have reached you in the past, and there's a number of people who are dealing with the limitations with their current technology. So quite a wide variety of things there. If there's any other comments you want to add into that, you can also add that to the discussion on our web chat. So I think David, you were picking up the next.
I am indeed.
Part.
Thank you very much, John T. So I'm just going to talk now about long-term planning and workforce management. So often people think workforce management is just for short-term forecasting, but it's also incredibly useful for long-term strategic resource optimization. So what do I mean by long-term? Well, really I'm talking about any daily, weekly, monthly resource plans. It can be up to 5 years in advance. One of the key areas you would potentially look for your long-term planning or resource plans is in budget setting. Now, because you've captured all this wonderful data, you can then project this forward for staffing purposes. So going back to my retail days, I used to be submitting 2 budgets a year, one for each season, one for autumn, winter, one for spring, summer. And then when I was in a planning role for a building society, they'd be wanting to look at 3- and 5-year plans, so it'd be feeding into their target operating model. Now, what if scenarios? Now, they're not just for short-term forecasting. Longer term, you may want to look at your skills mix. What type of people do you need trained in particular areas, not just for the next few months, but over the next couple of years. So as a business, you might have a new strategic initiative, a new product, etc., that you need to plan for in advance. And it's particularly useful for site strategy. Particularly where you've got a business that's operating in different time zones, different geographical locations, you can utilize all the long-term data within your workforce management product to actually contribute to that site strategy and work out what is the best operating model for the business. And then one of the most effective uses of long-term forecasts for workforce management is working out the cost of campaigns and events. So obviously very useful for outsourcers if they're taking on new work, or you might have an annual event such as an annual statement drop or an end of season sale, for example. So you can start to build and cost these out on the longer term. So the key point on this really is workforce management. It's not just a tactical tool. It can really start to contribute to the strategy of the business. And again, if you're working with a planning team, it just demonstrates how they become the driving force for the operation and become mission critical to the business. Let's move on from forecasting now and talk about optimization of schedules and also simulation. So creating schedules within workforce management is where you can really get dangerous with it. You can do some really fantastic things. And the first thing I'd say is workforce management is scalable. So even with a very small number of agents, the impact can be significant. So yes, you can deploy it from a very small base up to many thousands of agents across multiple sites. And I've personally seen the impact workforce management has had just on one team. And that's because you know when the contacts are coming in, you can effectively schedule and you can plan and optimize your lunches and breaks better so you can hit those service levels. You're also, with workforce management, going to get a lot of different scheduling options. So what type of schedules are required to meet your demand? So this can be down to the creativity of the scheduler, albeit with some limitation of your business requirements, but you're going to have the flexibility to have fixed shifts, part-time shifts, rotating patterns, and what's very popular at the moment, things like annualized hours, and also things like flexi shift patterns. You may even want to look at split shifts. Come in the morning, do some contacts, go back, and then come back in the evening. So you can mix and match your different shift requirements. And say a lot of it is down to your creativity and imagination. And once you've created these wonderful schedules and you're happy with them, and you're meeting your requirements, it's then very easy to book in meetings and training via a workforce management product. So let workforce management take the strain for you. It can allocate the people to the meetings, and it will allocate them on the best day and the best time of the day. And again, I know trainers and team leaders, they love this. Why? Because it takes away all that headache of trying to schedule people in for some training. Doing it in a manual method is very time consuming. Now this one is about simulation. So this is really, if we want to go a bit deep with optimization of schedules, but what simulation is replicating your contact center environment from your routing, your skill sets, your schedules, and you'll be able to run simulation, and it will tell you how effective your resource plans are and give you some indication of what you need to do to improve your performance. So say really with the schedules, it is incredibly flexible, and the key is really to create schedules that not only meet your business targets, but also score highly for agent satisfaction, i.e. create schedules that your staff are happy to work. And one of the key challenges today is how we deal with multi-skilled staff. And I'm going to hand over to Colin now, who's going to talk.
Yeah, I think on simulation, I mean, that's really where sort of multi-skilled environments come in, because Erlang is great almost for a single skill, and its simulation is, as I understand it, what's needed for the complex multi-skill.
It is exactly that for your multi-skill, multi-site operations.
Okay, thank you. Colin.
Well, exactly taking on from what you say there, John T. What is multi-skilling? Well, ideally, let's think about an agent's day. I come in, I get trained on product A, I do work on that, but what we need in a call center is staff availability to ensure we have the right number, the right place, the right time, and the right skills to be available for the customer when they call. And often on a smaller contact centers or the smaller queues, we have a large amount of availability. So a lot of organizations understand and identify that merging the skills of an individual, could be product A, product B, and product C, or whatever that combination may be, those products will often have a different call arrival pattern, which will allow the agents to do more than one piece of work and have multiple skills in their armory. So how do we identify that? Well, we need to know, as I've mentioned, when those calls arrive, if we're looking at calls or those different pieces of work. Are they comparable for our agents to make sure that we're not asking someone 1 minute to take a benefits call, the next minute to deal with a highways issue and a pothole in the street? Whilst there may be combined skills someone can do, they're not very comparable. One of the worst things about multi-skilling is giving someone completely different mindset pieces of work, because that will impact the productivity and negate the benefits of multi-skilling and planning for it. So what, when, and how we do it by skill type, well, it could be a cultural piece, it could be channel. So skills might be email or text messages or white paper or phone calls. They could be classed as different skills. Sales and service, are they different skills? What we need to do is very much make sure that what we are combining in the agent's armory and our business setup are comparable things. One, in the way they arrive, two, in the way we can plan for them, but more importantly, three, in the way our agents can service them to ensure they're giving the customer the best experience they possibly can. Now, what kind of challenge is called? As John T referred to, and Dave did as well, We already have mentioned that a workforce management solution really helps us identify the time of the day our calls come in, and we forecast the best we can using the best information we've got to put us in the best place to deliver this plan. So once we start combining that to 2 or 3 or 4 skills, we're really emphasizing and escalating the complexity we're creating in our forecasts. Workforce management is fantastic at managing this for us. You might be a fantastic Excel jockey and be able to build the most complex models there are, but workforce management will still be better than anything you can build in Excel. And we need to keep that in mind, because that's where we utilize things like simulation to make sure that the workforce management thinks about different ways this may work to give us the best plan to manage our staff's time the best it can be. And let's be quite important here, workforce management isn't there to keep down costs. It's probably not just there to ensure we have the best service for our customers, it's actually there for our colleagues. And if we move on to the next slide, we can see some of the benefits we can actually obtain from workforce management for our colleagues. So we can make their days more interesting, we can make their days more fulfilling. So one of the things that we find is a member of staff always feels more empowered and more engaged with their job, where they can understand their contribution to the goals of the industry, and also feel like they're actually delivering a level of service for the customer which they can be proud of. To do that, they need to be energized, they need to understand that they're not just being done to, and actually that they are valued in our organization. Workforce management solutions very often come with the ability to increase the flexibility for the members of staff, giving them flexible shift patterns, the opportunity to often book holidays via web-based portals or internet-based portals, so I can see when the holidays are available. We employ hundreds of grown-ups. Workforce management really helps us treat them like grown-ups and give them the ability to manage their own work-life balance at an exceptional standard.
Yeah, and we're getting some feedback from some of the audience who are using shift swaps and find it very useful. Michelle has said we allow agents to swap shifts with others similarly skilled to support their work-life balance. Neil said we allow shifts swaps like for like, but offer overtime where shift numbers are short. James says we allow shift swaps to accommodate agents' requirements, but you can occasionally create problems sometimes, as do they have the skills of the agent they'd like to shift with? So it's not necessarily a complete panacea, but a very useful and very popular part of the armory.
Completely, and don't get me wrong, John, I've made that mistake before in organisations, and I've run planning teams who've made that mistake. And we learn and we have to re-engage our colleagues, but when we get it right, there's nothing more satisfying than an empowered workforce managing their time together for the customers. And we can get workforce management setups that do help manage the skills for us as well, John. So there's a lot of great opportunities out there.
Okay, thank you for that, Colin. David's now going to talk to us a little bit about empowerment.
Yeah, just to sort of reiterate that, I mean, workforce management often just seen as a way of improving agent productivity, but it's just this fantastic tool for empowering agents to do this great job. So as Colin was saying, workforce management provides self-service options. You can view and book your holidays, log your overtime, swap your shifts. You know, I used to run something called a holiday hotline in my role as a planner, where people could ring up in the morning and see if there were any holidays available for later on that day, which went down really well with the staff. It also gives us visibility. So the latest products allow employees to view the schedules remotely from home, and also via now smartphone applications. And also I think employees like workforce management because they can view their performance, they can see how they're doing in real time, compare themselves to the team. And it goes without saying, and I think Colin's touched on this as well, multi-skilled environments are more engaging for the employees. If you're handling more than one contact type, you're going to be more accountable. My top tip on this really is, if you're looking at engagement, involve your employees, your teams as much as possible in your shift planning process. Find out what works for them. Give them options on shift patterns. Let them vote on them. So the more you involve the employees, the better the buy-in will be. And one way of improving engagement is also can be done through managing shrinkage correctly. And again, workforce management can assist on this. So for those who don't know what shrinkage is the percentage of paid time an employee is not available to take a contact. So this is often split between planned, so for example holidays and training, and unplanned. So you can have ad hoc meeting, late, etc. So if you're using workforce management, it means you can phase your shrinkage, such as holidays, across the year. So in the quiet times, you can release more holidays, and during your peak periods, you can then reduce the allocation. And again, let workforce management take the strain. It can calculate those allowances for you. It can also auto-approve those time off requests as well. So again, for team leaders and planners, that's another very popular feature. And it also ensures, if you're using workforce management for shrinkage, it makes sure your allocations are taken up. You can track and manage, and it helps to avoid any bunching up of late requests. So on that, we're now going back to John T for another poll question.
Okay, yes, we're going to put up a poll question, and the poll question is, what do you currently use within your call center to schedule and forecast staff? Just pull the slides up here. So the options are Excel spreadsheets, a workforce management system on site, a hosted workforce management system, some sort of bespoke system developed in-house, or none of the above. So if you'd just like to vote on there, you are allowed to vote for more than one option. So just pull the results up on the screen there. It'd be quite interesting to see. My guess is that there's probably going to be quite a large number of people using spreadsheets. Let's just share the results with everyone. Yeah, it looks like Excel spreadsheets. Gosh, quite a large number there. 57%, 42% using an existing workforce management system, and 13% using a hosted. So actually, a large number of the audience not using any form of workforce management system there.
Excellent. They're very interesting results, and that sort of follows on to the next topic, which is going to be about Excel spreadsheets. So spreadsheets and planning. Now, you may be using spreadsheets for planning purposes. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a good spreadsheet. I'm a bit of an anorak. I could spend long winter nights creating Excel graphs, but there's a critical mass where it becomes painful to maintain. So for organisations not using workforce management, there's a bit of a tipping point.
Sorry to interrupt. You're not actually sharing your slides at the moment.
Okay, Richard, if you'd like to perhaps put the slides up, and then we'll carry on.
Okay.
Carry on with the presentation. Thank you. So carry on.
Okay, so as I was saying, there is a bit of a tipping point where it starts to become complicated very quickly. I mean, you can create your forecast via spreadsheets, and I've seen that done accurately, but it becomes difficult for multi-skilled staff, and spreadsheets become complex. And you tend to get a bit of a skills dependency, i.e. someone in the organisation has created your planning on Excel, and they tend to become indispensable. But for me, the most compelling reason to bin the spreadsheet is they don't provide any visibility of your workforce management process or techniques, not only to your agents, but to the wider business.
That's probably even worse for Nicola, who says we use an A4 diary for our scheduling.
Wow, that's, that's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive. So in terms of spreadsheets and planning, when I'm going to organisations, what I tend to see with organisations that have workforce management, they tend to know what their busy periods are. So you know across the day the busy periods to schedule against. It's less of a knee-jerk environment. It's going to be more proactive. And workforce management, as we've touched on, it improves your productivity. You're not going to burn staff out. They're not going to be underutilised. And you're also going to get access to real-time performance. So managing your contacts in real time, see your performance in real time. And obviously you're going to improve your agent satisfaction. So planning, okay, it's not a mystical art, it is logical, and if you do make it visible to your agents, it means they can be active in the planning strategy. Okay, we're almost to the close now, but just before I close, I'm just going to quickly cover off how you can deploy a workforce management into a business. Now, there are primarily two options available. You can either go down a hosted workforce management solution, or via an on-premise type solution. So for hosting, your workforce management will be accessed via the cloud, and the servers, etc., won't be physically on site. So why as an organization would you choose the cloud-based option? Well, they tend to be based on a pay-as-you-go type monthly charge, so it will give you this ability to scale up and down. So in a seasonal type business, that might be very attractive. It's also very useful for the hosted route for smaller organizations. They may want a quick route into workforce management without that initial expenditure. Plus, you might not have the in-house resource planning skills, so you could potentially go for some sort of managed service. You may, of course, want to keep on-premise. And for people on-premise, sometimes the total cost of ownership may be cheaper over the longer term, i.e. you're making a one-off cost rather than monthly installments. There may be security reasons for keeping it in-house as well. But the key thing I'd say on this to remember is hosted or on-premise, they should provide exactly the same functionality. So if you go down the hosted route, there should be no reduction in functionality or capability. And that's where we come to the end. So I'll pass back to John T.
Okay, it's now part of the time of the agenda where it's your time to share your tips for workforce management. We've had a number of tips sent in. I think the chance of winning a bottle of champagne is much better than winning the national lottery. So if you'd like to put those tips in, we've got a number here. Paul has said, my top tip is to understand your back office processes and call flows now, because if you can't manage it, you can't possibly forecast it. David?
I think that's an excellent tip. I mean, it's back to saying until you can start to measure it and manage things, you can't do anything with it. And yeah, fantastic.
And Deborah has said, working with agents to manage sickness, giving bonus days for no sickness to staff to plan absence, and reduce the impact on the team, recognizing staff who commit to work. Sort of an interesting one there. Tov has said, measure agent utilization and feel free to deliver way above the SLA. Colin, how important is agent utilization in the process? Not sure if we've lost Colin there. We'll carry on and see if we can bring Colin back in a short while. Lorraine has said the key is efficiency. You need to effectively calculate requirements considering service levels and shrinkages while optimizing schedules based on these requirements. Schedule adherence should be strictly enforced to minimize shrinkage. You need not only consider service levels, but also customer satisfaction as well as agent work-life balance. And certainly work-life balance is one of the key ones to getting buy-in.
Exactly. I think Lorraine's captured it there. It's all about hitting your service levels, but balanced against your customer sat and your, satisfaction to the agents. Is what they want to work in a nice environment.
Colin, I don't know if we've got you back online.
You have indeed.
Okay. So Russell has said, don't take the forecast produced by your workforce management app as gospel. Use knowledge and experience to validate and amend if possible. Is this more than sort of doing special days, do you think?
Oh, completely. One of the biggest tips that we find organizations need to do is produce more than one forecast. Produce the technical one, the gut feel one, and use your WFM one. And exactly as Russell said, validate them against each other to get a sanity check.
Yeah, very good. Ben has said, develop a good working relationship with your customers. I presume that's your internal customers, because keeping each other informed of the latest situation is critical. Decision-making will be improved if you keep closely in touch. Certainly building links with the planning team is quite key to this. And James said preference-based scheduling is a great motivator for getting agents to work when it suits them and the business. I've seen in a lot of centres that work really well.
Yeah, and I think this is becoming more popular now, preference-based scheduling, particularly, if you look at the demographic of your employees, you might have a lot of students, for example, a lot of people with children. If you can accommodate that into your shifts and schedules, it's a very good thing indeed.
Yeah, because I think sort of quite often students don't like to start too early in the day, but are kind of quite happy to go up to sort of up until early evening, so
exactly,
mid-evening, depending on where they're working. Kaylee has said, be as clear as possible with staff about how the workforce management is calculated. If they have this information, they tend to be more accepting of the changes being made.
Again, fantastic point. Yeah, as I said earlier, include them as much as you possibly can. If you're looking at new shift patterns, get them involved. You know, have a little forum with them, see what they like, what they don't like, and try and accommodate that into your planning process.
Yeah, keep them as informed as possible. I'm not sure if that's sharing with them the Erlang calculation that goes behind it. Every company that is working on Excel spreadsheets should really consider getting a WFMS. It is the best way to go, says Wendy. Certainly, Colin, it's what I found is spreadsheets you can just about manage to forecast as long as it's sort of not multi-skilling, but scheduling is a bit of a nightmare on spreadsheets, isn't it?
Exactly, John. So you need to get quite complex. And one thing, if you can have a good spreadsheet, but it's not going to be scalable. If your business grows, you need Excel skills as well as business skills. We are massive advocates of workforce management solutions at the Professional Planning Forum. And I don't think there's ever been an organisation who haven't been able to prove a return on investment within a very short time span to give you an indication of how beneficial they are.
And one of the scary bits with spreadsheets is the number of errors. I think something like 10% of all spreadsheets got quite serious errors. And there was a scientific paper, I think it was last week, was retracted purely because of a simple error in the spreadsheet. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it, says Russell. Neil said, look at paid working time for each agent. Staff may be scheduled for 60 minutes, but may only have 15 minutes of active work.
Yeah, so that's linked to occupancy, how occupied your staff are. So you want to make sure that they're getting the right amount of work through, not too much, and they're not sitting there twiddling their thumbs.
Paul has said having as accurate and granular average handling times as you can means that you can hypothetically adapt operational processes and gauge resource cost impact.
Fantastic. Yeah, so you'll be typically dealing with a lot of lines coming into the business, and through workforce management you can monitor the different impacts of each of those lines. So,
Colin, you're a back office expert. Try to gain agreement to overflow calls into the back office to manage call spikes. This must be easy to implement within seconds in the scripting.
It is. One thing I would like to ensure you do before you build this in is make sure that taking staff away from the back office to deal with front office calls doesn't actually drive more calls into the front office in the long run. Let's not rob Peter to pay Paul. It can be very good for small tactical fixes, but let's not do it too often because it might cause more problems than it fixes. Okay,
we're going to pick up on a couple of audience questions there now, and then we can go back to a few more tips. Paul has said, out of interest, is workforce management software used by operations as well as just by planners?
Yes, it is indeed. It's not just for the planners. You could roll out workforce management to team leaders so they can view what their staff are doing, and they can handle the holiday requests. Yep. I've even seen it being used in marketing teams. They want to see volumes coming in, look at product launches, what the impact that has been. So it can be used in many different areas, really.
Wonderful. Rampali has said, generally a customer care agent does not always have the same expertise level in all skills. How should scheduling be done in these cases? So Colin, I guess this is a question about how you do multi-skilling in a workforce management system.
Well, that's the key thing, because we can identify the demand coming in by queue, John T, and we can call that a skill. We can actually track when they're required, when it gets busy, when it doesn't get busy, and it's really about strong coaching. The scheduling doesn't become an issue once the software realizes when the demand's coming in and what skills you have available. Often some of them will even tell you where you have shortfalls and where you need to go and develop or recruit further skills. So it's not much of a challenge as long as we know what we're trying to deliver.
And some systems allow you to sort of put different types of skill proficiency into different areas.
Completely, yeah. It's not just Colin can do skill A and skill B, as can John T, but actually John T is much better at skill B, Colin's much better at skill A. So let's prioritise them. The complexities they can handle are probably much more than we can even consider in our own minds.
So David, another question from Raphael. Is it scalable to move from on-premises to the cloud? If you've got a lot of data, can you do that on the cloud?
You can indeed. Effectively, you're still going to be connecting to your ACD, the calls coming in, etc. So, that is eminently possible. It's just a case of connecting it up securely, and then you will have access to it.
Yeah, and Alistair's last question, how would workforce management be rolled out to a new customer, and what is the time scale to complete, and what sort of training upskilling is needed?
Yeah, obviously it depends by customer, but what tends to happen is that the application will be built on the customer's data, and the customer will then be trained on their own data. So they go live in a real environment, and it tends to be a bit of handhold initially. As I say, you would probably need a couple of weeks worth of calls and contacts in there, do the training, and then go live and receive the support.
Yeah, so it doesn't take a terribly large amount of time. I guess if you haven't used one before, it just takes a while for the system to, as you get more information in, the forecast will become more and more accurate. And I guess after about 6 weeks, you're starting to get some quite good.
Exactly. And what you can do as well, before that, you can actually load in historical information as well.
Of course, yeah.
So you could load in, for example, the last 6 months to a year in advance and then set it live. So you've already got some historical information with which to do your forecasts. And then it's just a case of learning the functional side of it to actually generate them. And what I tend to find in workforce management applications, actually running a forecast is very easy. It's wizard-based. You'll click through. So there is a process to it. And it tends to follow, if you remember at the start of the webinar, that planning cycle. So there is a process to go through.
Okay, we're just going to take a couple more tips. And Babak has said it's important to have a backup plan for unplanned peaks. In the case of network failure in a telecommunications company, it can be implemented by having on-call agents who can answer calls forwarded to their mobile phones in an emergency. So I guess that's more about call routing than necessarily scheduling for it. And Eugene has said that ensure your team leaders are part of the workforce management process because they're the ones who enforce adherence.
Yes, adherence, in my experience when I've introduced adherence into contact centres, tend to do it, potentially over a couple of teams initially before it's rolled out to the larger organisation, just to gather feedback and make sure it's right for the organisation.
Okay, well that's about all the time we've got for this week.